Okay, today, as obvious, you guys can see this is going to be a review session with arrays and array lists. And then we are going to, after review, we are going to do some arrays exercises and array list exercises. I do have several planned for you guys, but I don't know how much we will be able to get through it in the amount of time that we have. Okay, first off, let's review arrays, right? What we did last week, pretty fresh in your memory, I hope. And basically a list of elements of the same type. It can be one-dimensional or two-dimensional. It can also be three-dimensional, four-dimensional. But for the purpose of this class, we will only be doing one-dimensional and two-dimensional arrays. It has a fixed length. You basically cannot add or make it longer or make it shorter once you create an array. That is one of the main differences it has with an array list. Here are the two ways that you initialize 1D and 2D arrays. You guys can see here, and arrays need to be imported, and the index starts at 0. Does anybody need a reminder on how to import it? No? Okay. I mean, if you do, just ask in the chat. And do we have any of our... Yeah, Jim is with us today, so you can just ask one of our TAs. On to the next slide. Array lists. Array lists, very obvious, list of elements of the same type, and you can add and remove elements. That's the main difference between arrays and array lists. Initialization, two ways to initialize it. The first way is when you initialize it with initial values. And one thing that I do have to note is that you have quotation marks around strings. You don't really have quotation marks around anything else. If you do want like an array list of ints, you don't put like quotation marks in there. Second way to initialize it, you just initialize the string, the name, basically like str string, and UTSA is an array list of strings, and then later on you can add or use the string.add function to give it more values. Again, array lists need to be imported, and the index also starts at 0. Any questions on arrays and array lists? No? Okay. If you do have any questions, put your questions in the chat or ask right now, because we are going to be getting into some exercises. Now, we have 10 array exercises and 5 array list exercises. We'll be starting with the array exercises. These two are quite easy, I hope. I will be giving you guys, let's say, 10 minutes maybe to complete these two, and afterwards I will go over the answers with you guys. And these are quite hard, so I will be probably walking you guys through these. So take your time, 10 minutes, and do these by yourself, okay? Okay, it is now 3:15. If you completed the exercise, good for you. If you're stuck, no worries. We will go over the answers right now. But before I go over the answers, does anybody want to share their answers? Or does anybody have like a question? No? Okay. Let me just share my screen. Okay. So here are the answers for the problem 1. Right here, and problem 2. So let's go over them one by one. In problem 1, you guys see here, I have an array of ints that's called value, and it's just 1 to 10. And I have the total, which is currently 0 because I haven't added anything to it yet. And then we go through the array and then we print out everything. Right. So let's run this. $55, right? So if you guys have a calculator, or you can just calculate it in your head, because 1 plus 10 is 11. We have 4 pairs, that's 44. A second. 11. That's another 11. That's another 11 and another 11. So 5 sets of 11s, that's 55. So problem 2, we have to print out a grid. You guys can see here, this grid right here is 10 by 10. Might not look like it, but it's 10 by 10. And so we have
I need to go.
First initialize a string that's called grid. That's 10 by 10.
We have a swimming class.
Right now it's like null. And then we add it, fill in every single slot with this dash, and then we print it out. Oh wait, my bad. I forgot to do a system.out.print line. Right, okay. Here we go. Now that's 10 by 10. If you want to, you can count, but I don't really recommend it. It's gonna take too long. And some of you might be wondering why we can't just do system.out.print line list. Oops. And the reason is this. If we do system.out.print line list, what it prints out, oh wait, not list, grid. What it actually prints out is the location for the memory in the back of the computer. So for example, you guys can see it's a bunch of java.lang.string and a bunch of weird numbers and letters. Now this weird number and letters is the code for where the item is actually stored. So you know how you go into like you go into your pantry and you're looking for your friend who's over at your first time over at your house is looking for a box of cereals and he doesn't know what the cereals. So you tell your friend the box of cereals is on the top left shelf from left to right, number 3, next to the box of Honey Nut Cheerios. Normal Cheerios is next to the box of Honey Nut Cheerios. Add something like this. This is a list of directions that tells the computer where to go to look for this array that's called grid. Because not everything is like stored with the name that we give it. The computer gives us its own name because that's just easier for for the computer to store it and know where it is. So that's why when we print out an array, it prints out the location where it is when it's stored in the computer. So like you can think of this as computer language. Now, how do we make, like, if you don't want to use for loops for every time you want to print out like a array, especially when there's like 2D arrays where you have to use like 2 for loops, what we can actually do is we can do array dot to string grid. Okay. When we do this, oh wait, no, what happened? Wait, there's a problem. It worked out with my other IDE. It didn't work with this IDE. For some reason. 1 second. This is why you don't change IDEs. You stick with one IDE. Well, maybe this function isn't supported in my IDE, but you can definitely try it in your IDE and tell me if it's supported with your IDE. I'll try to figure out something else as to why this isn't supported, because I feel like it should be. It's supported in most IDEs, but as of right now, let's move on to the next question. Write a program to calculate the average value of an array element. Now, to calculate the average value, this is really simple. We can basically take what we have in problem 1 here, and we do total decreased divided by the values.length. And if you want an integer, you can just run it like this, because 55 divided by 10 is 5 with a remainder. But if you want it as a double, you just have to switch the value of the double. So now it's 5.5. Relatively simple question. Does anybody have any questions about this? Okay. No. All right, let's move on to question 4. Write a program to test if an array contains a specific value. Okay, let's say this value is problem 4 right now. Let's say I'm just gonna be using this like one array because I don't want to be creating like a new array for every single problem. Let's say the value that we want to look for is int specific equals 7. Let's say we want to look for the value 7. Now what we do is we test if I have to set a boolean too. Boolean exist equals false, and if specific, what's going on? Unfortunately, my computer has broken, technical difficulties. The keyboard is not working no matter what I type. Jim, can you do me a favor and take over the lesson? You should have this slide while I go and restart my computer to figure out what's wrong.
Okay, yeah, just let me screen share.
I'm so sorry about this, guys. I didn't know my computer would do something like this in the middle of the lesson.
Okay, I'm just gonna briefly go over the second to last slide, the array exercises. Can everyone click on annotate? I just want to see if this works. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to have people answer the questions and have them type out the answers to the questions in here. Does anyone know the answer to the first question? The average value of an array element. Oh, let me type. So let me type a sample array, and then you can calculate it using a program. So this. Okay. And for 4, just say true or false. This one is true or false. Okay, so for the first, I'll just do this. For the first question, it's asking you to write a program to calculate the average value of an array element. And I don't know if Cindy talked about this before, but it's usually a good practice to write pseudocode before writing it out. So I'll just write right here. So I'm not going to set it up with the main and the class and everything, but what you really need to do is you set an array. So let's name this array 1, right? So array 1. This is going to be an int array 1 equals the new int. So what is this? So this is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So it's going to be 12. Oh, it's not letting me edit. All right, so there's going to be 12 element in there. And what you can do is you can generate the numbers. And it doesn't really matter what numbers it is, because it's asking you to write a general program. So you can do the for loop, or you could say I smaller than 12 in this case, since you know it's a fixed sized array, and then increments. So you have the for loop set up. You're going to loop through the array, and what's going to happen is you need a variable to contain the values. So let's call this sum. sure you guys all know how to do this. What you would do is you can do sum plus increment array1 value. So I'm not going to initialize the array since it could be any values at this point, but you would increment the sum based on the values, and after that, after the loop finish, you would just return average, which is just the sum over the length divided by what. And don't forget the semicolon. Oh, combine. Okay. I'm just gonna make it smaller. All right, does this make sense? Do we all know how to make the first program? All right. So for the next one, it's asking us to write a program to test if an array contains a specific value. And there's a shortcut to do this problem. I know we haven't covered data structure yet, but it is quite useful. It's called a tree map or tree set. So what you can do is, and of course you have to import Java utils, but you can create a tree set, and let's just say the sample array is an int array, right? You can create a tree set and name it duplicate. You can set it tree set. What the tree set does, and we will cover data structure later, like I said, but what it does is that it eliminates duplicate values. And so all you're going to do is you're only going to get unique values. So you're only going to get unique values, and it just kind of make it easier. Say you have a bunch of numbers that are you have a bunch of values that are the same in the array. So the array is has a very large size, but most of the values or all the values are the same. Looping through that is not going to be very efficient. And so it would help if you know the unique values contained inside the array. And to do that, the easiest way to do that is to create a tree set and dump all the values in that array into the tree set, so it eliminates, the algorithm eliminates duplicates for you. So I'll show you what I mean. So let's just say we have a sample array called array1. It could be int, since in this case we're using integer. But what you can do is, and again, don't forget the parentheses when you're setting up data structures. But what you can do is you can set up a for loop, right? Much smaller than we actually know that's not for number 4. Let's save this to this another. Okay, so that's not, oh, okay. Yeah, there's an easier way to do 4. Okay, so you can create a function, but I guess you guys already know. Void, would this be void? Yes. So let's just say the value is we're looking for is target and equals to some value. So I'm not going to initialize it here, but for number 4, you can just loop the array, very similar to number 3. Do array.length, loop through it, Very simple. So there's actually no need for data structures, but okay, so loop through the array, and if array 1 value equates to target, and if the array contains strings, then you would do dot equals to instead of double equal signs, and which we talked about earlier. But so if array 1 I equates to this target value, then you return true. Create a function for that, but this is right, so that's true. Any questions? Yeah, so these should be fairly simple. For number 6, write a program to find the common elements between 2 arrays. No? Okay. All right, so number 6, write a program to find the common elements between 2 arrays of strings. Okay, so now it's asking us, oh, number 5, excuse me. Write a program to find the duplicate values of an array of ints. Okay, so let's remember, if it's asking for unique values, so if the question is phrased like, write a program to find the duplicate values, if it was asking for unique values, then use duplicate. But I mean like tree set, right, which I named duplicate. So if it was asking for unique values, then you can use a tree set, which does not allow duplicates in the data structure. You can use a tree set, a tree map, which we'll talk about a little later. But in this case, it's asking for to find duplicate values of an array of ints. And you can pretty much count the numbers of, you can count the frequencies of each element. Like, well, I guess you could use, yeah. Well, since I brought up tree set, I'm just going to do this with tree set here. Since there are other ways to do it without using this data structure, but I just want to show you guys how you would do it with. So we'll loop through it, loop through the sample array. So let's just call this sample. Okay. I'm not going to initialize it again, but let's just call this sample. So you want to find the duplicate values, but first you want to know what are all the values in that array. So what you can do is you can dot add sample I. Okay, so this will add all the values of that array, all the elements of that array, of that sample array. Let me add it here. List it. Okay. So you have all that array content inside this tree set. And of course, like I said, there's not going to be any duplicate values in the tree set. So it's not going to be, the values in that tree set is not going to be exactly the same as the values in this sample array. So why is that helpful? Well, now that you know the unique values, and by unique, I don't mean like there's no duplicates. I mean like now that you've gotten rid of all the duplicates, right? You can loop through that array again. You can loop through that array again, and then keep a frequency count. You can keep a frequency count, and you, again, like I said, you could do this with an array as well, but I just wanted to show you guys using tree set. So loop through the array again. This time you can keep a duplicate frequency count. Oh. Right, so keep a frequency count. If duplicate contains, and contains is the function contains is exactly what it sounds like, right? Checking if duplicate the tree set has that value that we're looking for. The value, so in this case, we're just looping through it. If it contains sample I, right, you would simply, and of course, we need a frequency. You simply set this to, that's no need for fancy syntax here. You simply set it to that, right? And of course, we need to initialize the frequency array. So let's call this frequency new. And since we want all the values in that frequency array to start to be 0 in the beginning, we can just say this. Any questions so far? I know that was a lot. But yeah, so initialize frequency array. So you initialize the frequency array, and what this does is that it has the exact same size as the sample array, right? But the value in that frequency array starts with 0, and what that symbolizes the number of times the value at that position, right? At position I. Remember, frequency array has the exact same size as the sample array. So this I here, frequency I, the position I is the same for sample and for frequency. So what you do is you check to see the element, to see if the element at position I in the sample array, right? Again, we're checking here in the sample array, is contained in the duplicate tree set. So basically you're checking to see if the position, the element at position I in the sample array is occurring more than once. And you're counting, and how would you know if it occurs more than once? Well, you're counting the number of times it occurs, and hence we have the frequency array. Each position in that frequency array stores the number of times the value at position I in the sample array occurs. So let me say that again. Each position, so in this case, position I, each position in the frequency array contains the number of times the element at that same position occurs. So, and what that does, now you have, after the for loop, right after it loops over, the sample array, what you have, output should look something like, say if, the sample array was, I don't know, the sample array looks like this, 1 1 2 2 3 3, right? The frequency output for frequency. Okay, so frequency. Okay, so the output for frequency should look something like oh wait, made a mistake here, sorry. This should not be sample length. This should be duplicate that size, because we need this to be unique values. So yeah. How many unique values? Can someone tell me how many unique values are in the sample array? Okay, so there are 3, right? Sizes, unique values. There are 3 unique values, right? 1, 2, and 3. Each has 1 duplicate. So there's going to be 3 values in the frequency array. And how many times does 1 occurs? Well, it occurs 2 times. So this is going to be this is going to be 0 plus, okay, so 0 plus 1. This is going to be 2, right? Because the first time it occurs, this will be 0. Remember, everything starts with 0 in the frequency array. So it will be 0 plus 1. And I think it will help for me to show you what duplicate, the tree site, the set duplicate looks like. And it simply looks like this, since we're removing the duplicates, right? So no duplicate, right? And you have that, you have this. So the frequency for 1 will be 2. Frequency for 2 will be 2, since, you know, it's checking if the duplicate contains 2 when it's looping through, right? So I is 0, I is 1, I is 2. Boom, you have a duplicate. This is true, right? This statement is true because duplicate does contain 2 here. So what is I at this point? 0, 1, 2. Frequency position 2 is equals to frequency in position 2, which is 0. This, which is 0 plus 1, right? So 0 plus 1 is equals to 1. And then you loop that again. Now frequency at I is 1, right? Because the values do the same. So 2. 1 plus 1 is 2, right? So that's how we got the 2 here. And the same logic applies for the other values. That will be our frequency array. And so what this means is that, remember, the values here are not indexes. There's a number of times each value appears. So now let's see what we should return based on this. It's asking us to write a program to find the duplicate values of an array of ints, right? So if frequency I is bigger than 1, right? Or in other words, if it's bigger or equals to 2, right? So if it's bigger than 1, well then it is a duplicate. It has a duplicate because if it occurs more than once, it has a duplicate. So you would return that, or let's just say output, right? Output. System, let's just say print. I'm just going to print line sample, or I'm sorry, not sample, duplicate I. Okay, and then you will loop through this, and you will loop through this. Give me a second. And you would loop through this print I equals to 0, I smaller than sample duplicate size I plus plus. Okay. So there we go. Because since duplicate has the same size as frequency, you're checking to see that number of times the element at position I is bigger than 1, which means it contains a duplicate, and you're printing out the value. Okay. All right, does that make sense? Okay, so it's 3:58. Well, 6:58 here since I'm using Eastern time, but it's 3:58 Pacific time. So I think that's about the end. Brings us right to the end of the class. So we don't have time to finish 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think Cindy might decide to spend some time on that next class. And again, we have one more slide on ArrayList, but that's it.